Okay, everybody. Oh,
Unique New York. Unique New York.
How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? Welcome to The Obvious Choice. I'm here joined by, I want to say Reggie.
Whatever.
And Amber. And it's great to be back. Today, we have a few different topics we're going to hit on really, really quick. We're going to talk about what to do when somebody tags you and you get like a bit of an influx in followers. We're going to talk about an expansion on my local podcast idea. This is exactly what I would do if I was growing like a local gym or anything similar to that. It's all the marketing that I would do. And I want to talk about expansion of that. And then I want to give an example of a trainer who has built up a phenomenal business selling packages, the lowest of which is $5,000. And he's done this all without a single social media post. So I can tell you about how he did that as well. Why don't I start with the podcast thing? Because I think it'll be the quickest. And so for those of you who don't know, we've talked about this a few times in the podcast before, so I won't go super deep into it, but I believe that the best marketing these days, actually, if you have a local business, like could be in gym, local coaching business, is actually to start a local podcast. And the local podcast is not necessarily a podcast about fitness or about what your business is. It's a local podcast that celebrates the local community. And so I live in the township of Etobicoke in Toronto, so I call it the Best of Etobicoke podcast. And by definition, this podcast is rate limiting, right? It can't grow any bigger than that township. And that's actually part of the glory of it. I first came up with this concept actually on a podcast for, it was a business podcast for gym owners that nobody listens to because nobody listens to generalized podcasts. And so they, a lot of people are starting basically creating media as a way to like attract customers and then wondering why it's not attracting customers. It's because if you ask somebody for help or if you ask somebody for business, they're going to give you advice. But if you ask somebody for advice, they're going to give you help and they're going to want to do business with you. And what you also have to understand, of course, is that a lot of like conventionally successful people, like people who run businesses and stuff like that, actually crave recognition and crave status. There's this joke where all authors want to own a big business and all people who own a big business want to be authors. And it's this idea that they crave this recognition, that they crave this status. And so you can kind of give that to them. And so if you were to call up, like I don't know. Let me take a step back. Part of having a vision is knowing exactly what acts you need to take in order to achieve that vision. If you don't have a vision, even if you're doing the right things to market your business or help your clients or whatever, what you will find is that you don't actually have confidence that you're doing the right things. And so then you'll jump off and do other stuff. When you have a vision, because the kind of marketing is tight, i.e. you have this like tight neighborhood, Etobicoke, that you're doing this podcast for, you know exactly who to reach out to. And as I'll tell you, you know exactly how to expand the thing. And so part of the fun thing as I'm writing this book is that it's allowing me to explore the stuff that we're talking about really, really deep and think about like new ways to do it. And so I thought about like a way to growth hack this podcast that I think is really, really cool that I want to tell you guys about. So the first step of it, which we've spoken about, is you call up like the local business owners. And instead of saying, hey, I'm John, I own a local business. Yeah, can I give you like a 20% discount? Or can I do like a lunch and learn with like your business? Like, click, like they're not going to take your call. But if you call them up and you're like, hey, Lynn, what's going on? My name's John. I'm the host of the Best Etobicoke podcast. We interview the thought leaders. We interview the business leaders that are moving the township of Etobicoke forward. I'd love to know your story. I'd love to share it with their listeners. Can I get an hour of your time?
Hell, sign me up, son.
Hell yes, right? So now you're getting business mentoring from the top people in your community. You're building a network from the top people in your community. You're having a one-on-one conversation with them. At the end of that call, you're going to ask them if they can think of one or two people to introduce you to. Now, they're going to introduce you to, i.e. refer you to other really successful people in the neighborhood. And these people are both good customers, potentially, for your gym, right? They're also like well-connected. And so then your gym's going to start to be recommended by you. But here's the really cool part is, let me tell you a story that really talks about this example. In my neighborhood, there is a completely misplaced but simultaneously perfectly placed Turkish cafe. And I want to know what the heck the story is behind that place. Because they've got amazing Turkish coffee. They've got legit Turkish delight. They've got real Turkish sausage. And like, how the heck did this person end up in Etobicoke? Like, there's no, like, how did that happen? Like, I want to know this, right? So I would call up this guy because I go there all the time because I like it there. So I would call up this guy and I like interview him and get a story. Like, how did you end up here? Why is this place so good? And I do the episode with him. And then afterwards, when I'm done, what I would do is I would print up hundreds of cards that would cost me like a few dollars. Right. I print up hundreds of cards, and on these cards would have the headline of the podcast episode, which would be something to the tune of, how the heck did a Turkish cafe end up in Etobicoke? It would have the face of this guy who runs the cafe. It would have a QR code that links to the episode. And of course, linking to the episode would link them to my gym's website that hosts the episode that has the links to the podcast channels. And then at the bottom of it, it would say presented by Jonathan Goodman's, whatever, Etobicoke Gym. And I would give them to this guy. And I would say, hey, man, look, like, I loved hearing your story. And I can tell you what, knowing how much you care, knowing your background, I already love this place. Now I love this place. Like, I want to keep coming back here. I think more people need to know your story. I think the more people that know your story are going to come back here over and over and over again. So let's get your podcast listened to by all of the people who come into your store. Here, why don't you staple these onto every receipt of everybody who comes into your store? Well, it's a pretty easy hell yes for him. Doesn't cost him anything. It's only a benefit. He hasn't done any work. And I can tell you, like, if I were to go into that cafe and I got my receipt, I'm just thinking my own, if you were to go into like a local shop like that, that's like kind of unique in some way, and it's where you live, and you would get a receipt that was just something like that, that said, listen, I'd probably check out that podcast. Like, I probably would. That would immediately push all of the other stuff that I want to consume to the side, because it's local, it's specific to me. I have some connection to the person there, which immediately cuts through all the noise online. And so you do that with the Turkish coffee shop. You do that with the local pub. You do that with the little deli, right? Now, all of a sudden, you have thousands of patrons of these places every single day, and they're all getting codes to listen to your podcast, broadcasting these people, but also promoting your gym. And so that's the only piece that I wanted to add to that concept of like the best of Etobicoke. And then, of course, the final bit of it is it would be pretty easy to get sponsorship for that podcast too. So now, by having like a rate limiting local podcast, you are getting paid to market your gym, network with the most successful people in your community who are going to recommend you to others. You're going to get free mentorship multiple times a week from the most successful people in your community. And there's going to be thousands of people that are going to be marketed to for free in a way that is specific and interesting for them. That's all going to be happening without you touching it. I don't know. What do you think about that? I think it's pretty cool.
It's thorough. I like the idea of shrinking down to build up, right? Shrinking the area.
That's what she said.
Big. Jesus. I like the idea. How may I reword this? I like the idea. I like the idea that you become the bigger fish in the smaller pond versus what everyone else tries to do, which is take over the planet. Everybody else is pinky in the brain, right? What are we going to do next, brain? Try to rule the world. Like, you don't have to do that. Rule your city first. You know, the Spider-Man theory. Animaniacs is great. Some of the best cartoonery that happened in the 90s and 2000s. If you go back, the best thing about Animaniacs and brilliantly written cartoonery is that as you age and become more worldly, it becomes funnier to go back and watch it.
You know it's
you
back, right?
Is it?
Yeah, the Animaniacs is back and modernized and all that stuff.
Don't play with my emotions, Amber.
I'm serious. It's good.
It would be wrong to kid me.
I know, but you can't joke like we used to.
All right, okay.
But I like that a lot. I like that. I like that idea of it's better to be a big fish in a small pond.
Yes.
If now, I mean, but there's corollaries to this, right? Like there's nuance to all this shit. Because if you're trying to become famous on the internet, if you're trying to build something that's like massive, then no, you try to like you attack the biggest pond, it's like it's this conflicting messaging that you get from all of these, from like the Hustle University crew.
Right.
You know, how do you like make as much money and
hustle
and
porn,
whatever, as hustle porn as you can, which is, hey, you know, look at your TAM, look at the total available market. If you want to build a business that's sellable, then you have to consider the TAM, you have to consider the total available market. But I don't think that many people want that. And this podcast and this, what we're talking about really isn't for you, if that's the case. You know, if you want to take a shot at something massive, but if you want to build like I bet you I could build a high 6 or low 7-figure gym purely through that podcast.
Yes.
Probably in half a year. I don't know. I kind of want to try to do it.
Right. I kind of want you to do it.
Yeah. If I ever stop traveling, I kind of want to do it because it seems so straightforward to me. But you know, you hear all the time in like the business world, it's like, oh, you know, it's better to own a small piece of a giant pie than and it's funny because I've reflected on that a lot. You know, it's this idea that you talk about it a lot with, total available markets. For example, the total available market for online trainer education is pretty small. What'd you say? $100 million a year? Not even that, probably. Like we have been a big player in that space for the last 7 or 8 years, and we would not be a big player in many spaces. And but then you look at like the supplement industry, for example, and you could have $100 million business and be like a small supplement company. And so it's just a matter of what kind of game you want to play. And then you, of course, comes into ownership. I don't remember who it might have been. Quest Bars or Quest Nutrition, maybe. But I think it was the owner that was talking about this. I could be making that up. Doesn't matter who it was. One of the like protein bar companies. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about getting investment. And they said, I realized that if I got this big investment and gave away like the majority of equity in my company, they were going to be able to grow my company to the point where my equity was worth more than if I were to own it myself. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like it makes sense. This big private equity or venture capital company comes in and they infuse whatever, tens of millions more dollars into your thing. That rarely happens, number one. Usually what happens is your company turns into a steaming pile of crap as a result, as we've seen in our space a few times. I won't name any names. But even if it does, you lose control and you lose a lot of your purpose of the thing. And I actually wrote at the end of the book about how one of the things that I really decided I wanted to do was maintain control. I own 100% of everything that I've done. That is not a financially motivated decision. I have a lot of friends who have sold off partial or full equity of what they've done, and they've walked away with way more money. But for the most part, these people are bored out of their freaking minds, and they're kind of not happy with what their companies have turned into once they left. And they've lost a lot of their purpose. Now they'll find it, and some of them have already found it. But I ask, I guess, with this whole conversation, which is not really that relevant to anything, but I ask with this whole conversation, like, what are you kind of doing this for? I don't want to stop working. I just want to be able to do work that is purposeful for me and where I'm in control and I have maximum amounts of freedom. And And that's where a lot of these conversations stem from. So I like that idea of like, if that sounds good to you, right? Being a big fish in a small pond is a fantastic place to be. See that? How I brought that back?
It's very good, Jonathan.
Yeah, because that was going nowhere for a while. You want to talk about your thing? I don't know. I want to talk about that a little bit more. What we were talking about, or you want to talk about your thing, Ryan?
I would like to offer some commentary on what you just said. And the commentary is this: for those out there listening who have been struggling the last 5 years plus to become a quote unquote influencer, and maybe in a smaller market, like geographically and locally, it's a brilliant idea that you just heard, right? Because it doesn't pay for you to struggle to get to 10K followers if you cannot feed yourself or your family, and you are stressed every single month of your life about one client quitting, right? And I had this conversation today. So go ahead, John. Yeah, I just had this conversation today with the online trainer online trainer academy student, and just all to pieces about the fact that someone's threatening to quit training with me. I don't know what I'm going to do. That makes me sad. That makes me, but this very same person absolutely has the opportunity that you just talked about and could revolutionize her life, right? 5-10x her income simply by working locally. I think it's a great idea.
I had in our mentorship, one of our students was asking me about this because I think he's going to start it. And he was like, yeah, I was going to do this, the Best of Ireland podcast, but should I do, I listened to your last podcast where you talked about it. Should I do the Best of Limerick? It has about 100,000 people. And I said, neither is necessarily better or worse, but they're different. The Best of Ireland podcast is the type of thing that you would do if you wanted to be a podcaster. The Best of Limerick podcast is a podcast that you would do if you wanted to build a business off of your podcast. That's the difference. And I don't think either is better or worse. I just think that they're very different. Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to get a lot of messages from people listening to the podcast because people are starting to listen to the podcast, which is cool. And I got one yesterday, actually. And it was from somebody who said like, hey, and I've gotten a few messages like this actually, like, hey, not to, rub your shoulders or anything, but like, you're right. There's a guy in my town that I called because he rose from 2,000 to 30,000 followers really, really quickly. And so I called him and, I know him, and I called him and I asked him how he did it because I wanted to know how he grew his following so quick. And I found out that his last launch, he had to give away 8 of the 10 spots because nobody would sign up. And I've never had trouble getting clients. And so there's a, maybe this segues into this story. Where's this guy? This is the worst thing to do on a podcast.
No, okay. I like it.
So I'll tell you this quick story about Freddie that I wrote in the book. And so it relates to this. So I've got this friend, his name's Freddie, and I all the names are changed. His name's not actually Freddie, but I figured friend and Freddie both start with F, so it worked for the book. So
like an friend. Law and Order episode. The names have been changed, but the cases are real.
The cases are real. Yeah. So that's the case with this book, is all the names are changed, but the cases are real. The only thing that's not is actually this Best of Etobicoke podcast. And I just say straight up, I'm like, this is a thought experiment. This is if I were to start a local brick and mortar coaching practice of any kind, this is all the marketing that I would do, is actually what the book was. And what's in the book. Anyway, I have a friend, Freddie, and it's this type of story. He was upset that his Instagram wasn't growing, right? And the guy writes for magazines. He trains a full roster of clients, and he has online clients, both with a wait list. And he teaches at the local community college, which is just gets paid a bit, but it's basically volunteer. It's just, he grew up in a he had a difficult upbringing, and a lot of these types of community services were really important for him, and this is his way of giving back. But so in between all of this, he tries to create Instagram content. And then he complained to me that younger coaches with less knowledge are getting all the attention online. And he's right. They are. These coaches have no family, no job. They spend all their time 7 days a week creating content. Freddie, on the other hand, is fitting it in between 3 jobs, all of which provide him with purpose and profits. And this is along all of the other responsibilities of a grown-ass adult.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the social media content creators, I'm actually not going to call them creators or content creators anymore. I'm just going to call them entertainers from now on.
Appropriate.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being an entertainer. I really don't. These people are hoping for endorsement deals. They're begging you to buy their supplements with their coupon code.
Mm-hmm.
Freddie, on the other hand, has a full coaching practice, including some very notable celebrities, by the way, and a wait list. Now, again, like I cannot stress this enough. Like, neither situation is better or worse. They're different, though. Desiring one, though, while having the other is going to make you miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a lot of what we're saying here. This idea of Freddie has built an incredible name for himself to the point where, because of a lot of the writing that he's doing and reputation that he's built in the industry, he's in Toronto, which is a hotbed for like movie production, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of celebrities come through, and a lot of the celebrity trainers and stuff like that we know in LA send clients, like people, like actors will ask if they're in Toronto filming, they'll be like, hey, do you have a trainer referral? And they'll refer Freddie. And yet this guy's upset that he's like not growing on Instagram fast enough. I thought that was a good story to tell.
Oh, that was a period. Your periods are like they're like assassins, John. They're like ninja. They're just hiding in the shadows, waiting to let you know that the sentence is over. We never see them. There's the stealth of your periods is, and your sky commas too are amazing. But your periods are really ninjutsu level. I love what you just shared, because it goes back to the discussion that we've had previously about rappers wanting to be athletes and athletes wanting to be rappers. It's just something about that green grass on that other side that's so alluring to us. But it's usually, I think that if we had higher levels of self-awareness, we'd all do better in whatever we're doing. And I think that when I'm having conversations with the coaches that we're mentoring, what I'm always attempting to do is to awareness, and I'm sure as well, by just asking those good questions, like those 5 why questions. Like, what are you trying to get accomplished? Why is that important to you? What do you really want to have happen here? Because I think that it's easy to get disconnected from that because we're insulated in a bubble of the OTA. I often say the best asset that you have now is that you have coaches and mentors that can help you. And then I'll follow that with the best asset I had in 2014 when I decided to go online was that I knew no one who was doing online training. So I had nobody to compare to. Yeah, I thought I invented online training in 2014. Swear my hand to the Father, Jesus. Yeah. I thought for sure I had created online training. And because of that, I didn't have the comparison. Like there's no imposter syndrome when there's no industry to feel like you're an imposter in. Yeah. That's a gift when you're starting.
I mean, look, my hand to the skies. Jewish fairy godmother.
Okay, I was about to say, I was waiting on the J word there. One of them, or both.
There's a whole bunch of like really interesting thought experiment questions that you can ask for your business, and they're like challenging. And so, one of them, I mean, what you just hit on was kind of forced. It was somewhat similar with me. I built myself up where Yeah, sure, the internet existed, but I mean, it was like 2011. It was not the same as it was today. You had to go out and seek stuff. But you can still do some of these experiments yourself. There's a whole bunch of questions to ask. For example, if I never generate another customer through social media again, what would that mean? Now, it doesn't mean that you don't need to do that. But if you say, if you use that as a filter, your mind will start taking you in places that will start to explore things that you wouldn't otherwise explore. Mm-hmm. If I could only generate new customers through referrals from my existing customers, what would I change? Those are really interesting questions that open up a whole new way of thinking. And I encourage you to do this. Write on a piece of paper, I can never generate a new customer again.
Thank you for the visual aid on
Yes,
this podcast.
In case you didn't know what that was.
I felt like I needed to narrate it. Jonathan shows a piece of paper on screen.
I always have a notebook beside me whenever I'm recording a podcast in case I need to take notes, and I never take a note. Write on a piece of paper. I can never generate another customer through social media. Here's what I'm going to do.
Right.
And just take yourself to a quiet space and just write that down and just see what comes out. Because you will be surprised. Here's my guess. Jewish fairy godmother. Here's my guess. Here's my guess. Okay. My guess is that you will look at that page and you'll be like, well, shit, there's a lot of better ideas here.
Right.
Than really stressing about not having the right trending music.
Yes.
And if you get stuck, do the exact opposite. Write down as many bad ideas as you can.
Right.
To help the juices flow. For me, I don't know about for you guys, but for me, it's a lot easier to come up with stupid shit than it is with good stuff. And so when I start with like, okay, let me come up with the dumbest idea I possibly can. And then it starts to kind of become fun. And then other stuff comes up like, oh, wait, well, maybe if I tweaked this just a little bit, then maybe that would work. Yeah.
Often the best ideas stem from really stupid ones.
Right.
Yeah. Like very often you're like, well, this is really stupid, but there's like actually like a glimmer of like something. What made this so funny? What made this so interesting? Mm-hmm. And often there's something something good there. Yeah.
I saw a comedian named Eddie Griffith do this routine on stage where he talked about stupid ideas and how they trended. And he was talking about Alexander Graham Bell. He was like, he must have been on cocaine or something because he sat in a room and said, damn, I want to talk to people who ain't even here. And that's how we got telephone. And it's a brilliant articulation of what you just said, right? How stupid must that have sounded? I'm going to make a carriage without horses.
Almost as stupid as the first guy who made a phone call to the wrong number.
Right.
Ring, ring, ring. Hello? Yes. I'm looking for John. There's no John here. What number are you trying to call? 3. This is 7.
Have you tried 1, 2, or have you tried 4 through 10? But that makes sense. I want to talk about. Can I talk about my thing, John? Can I talk about what happened?
Well, I mean, I invited you before, and then we went off on.
It was a lukewarm invitation at best, Jonathan. It was more like if you feel like it, but not like you really wanted me to do it.
I'm always interested in what's going on with you.
I didn't feel affirmed by that. The words of affirmation is one of my love languages, and I just didn't feel
that makes sense.
So I didn't say anything. Thank you, Amber. You're always so considerate. So here's what happened. So I got a share from a big page on the internet, and it was Jonathan's page, right? Mentioning the podcast. He mentioned my name. He even had a little pop-up picture of me that was something like this in the corner of the first of the slides. And as you all may guess, Jonathan, you got what, 70,000, 100,000 people now following you, something like that.
What's this for?
You for Instagram, Jonathan. Stay with the story, please, sir. I need you to focus right now, Jonathan.
There's people.
I'm talking about a story that involves us both. I'm looking for a wingman here, and you're no Iceman. Can I just go ahead and say that out loud?
I'm not a good wingman.
You are not.
I'm looking out for number one, my friend.
You're nobody's Iceman, that's for sure.
I just the reason why I'm not a good wingman.
173,000 followers.
Thank you, Amber, for cutting through whatever he was going to say that I didn't.
The reason why I'm not a good wingman is because I find that there's so much comedy and awkwardness and so much comedy and rudeness. Like, I don't condone rudeness, but I think that rudeness is really funny.
Well, if you're gonna be rude, make it funny. That's the rule.
That makes it worth the rudeness. So
Jonathan, whatever number Amber said, yes,
with his 173,000 adoring fans, he shares my name, right? So obviously I get an influx of trainers, right? I probably 400 or 500 people literally followed me because of that. Now it'll trim off. Yeah, it'll trim off for sure. Some of them they're not going to care what I have to say.
That's what the Moshe said to the young Jewish boy.
What?
No.
I don't know what that means.
I know.
You do? Okay.
We can leave that there. People who got it. People who don't.
Apologize to all of our Jewish aware members who heard that. Whatever, Jonathan. I have no idea. So I'm just not going to repeat it. In any case, so here's what I did, John. First thing I did, I took a cue from Jonathan Goodman. And I actually set aside time over the several days to reach back to everyone who followed me. And I literally thanked everybody who followed me.
How did you send him a message? How'd you do it?
I sent him a message and I
did you not get
their page.
How did you possibly do that?
It was over several days. So I knew over the course of a week or so that I blocked out power hours to thank these people for following me. And I perused their page a little bit in some cases. Mention something that I saw on the page in the context of, hey, thanks so much for following the account. I always say the account and not me, because I think saying following me is a little bit too pretentious for who I am. I don't like that. So I say, hey, thanks so much for following the account, or my account if I'm feeling particularly narcissistic. Thank you for following my account. But in any case, I thank them all.
With being narcissistic these days, my friend.
It's true. I thank them all by name. If they had a name. Quick intervention here.
That's wild. So you did this for like 400 people.
Yeah, for like 400 people. Quick sidebar. If you don't have your actual name on your social media account,
get your fucking name on your social media profile.
On your social media.
Jesus,
please.
And even if you don't have your name on your social media profile, get it on your fucking website.
Somewhere.
Somebody will message me, or they'll share something and I'll go to thank them, and I will click onto your website if I don't see your name, and I will go through the depths of your website.
Same.
And I will look. It's like Anchor Personal Training specializes in blah blah blah, a whole bunch of words that mean nothing to nobody.
Right.
It's like, just tell me your name is Beth. Like, God, Beth, put your name on your social media, Beth. I want to talk to you.
Your mom and dad toiled over that name for you to just shit all over it and say, I'm never using it. I'm going to call myself Anchorman Personal Training Limited. Like, I don't know. Are you actually Ron Burgundy?
Is that third person, talking to yourself in the third person? When you're the only person in the company and you keep referring to yourself differently?
Just put your goddamn name on your profile.
Write your name on your paper.
Be a human. Be an actual human.
Out of
Jesus.
Out of all of the episodes we have ever done, this is by far my favorite thing. What just happened?
Because the name? Yeah,
damn it, Beth.
Every expert here, Beth, is outraged that you don't put your name on it. It's the biggest personal issue in all of our lives.
How is someone supposed to reach out to you and ask for help if they don't know your name? I'm not reaching
your name.
Hi, Anchor Personal Training. I'd really like personal training to improve my fitness and get lean and lose weight without consuming excess calories.
Right.
Can you help with that?
And same thing with your logo as your profile picture. Nobody gives a shit about your logo.
Stop that. Cut that out. Let me see your eyes and your nose and your mouth. If you have, and if you don't, if you're like Cobra Commander, obviously maybe.
And the weirder you look, the better.
Yeah.
Weird, like it's actually a thing in character development that it's better to look weird. And if you're not weird or in some way ugly, you do something to make yourself more ugly.
Just do
People,
it.
you see this all over the
Just
place.
personalize
People
yourself.
grow
for God's sake.
dumbass mustaches or wear
Right.
stupid as all hell like nose strips or wear like orange brimmed glasses or anything. It's like they're purposefully making themselves weird so that you remember them. So Beth, if you think that you're ugly and you don't want to show your face, Beth, that's
not do
actually
it
a
because of
good
that.
thing.
Yeah, don't let that be the reason.
Don't let
Dr.
that be the
Seuss
reason, Beth.
yourself, Seuss it up. Dr. Seuss yourself. In any case, okay, so I'm back on task now. So I went
And also,
I
Beth, what's with the hyphenated name Beth Dash Ann? Like, come on.
You never,
hey, there, she's from the South. Leave her alone. She's a dash and
You
she's
take it
from the
back.
South.
I take it
you
back.
have to respect
Not many-
everything after that dash.
Not many
Jonathan.
Jews have been in the South. I'm not that
I've-
familiar.
I would not
learned-
recommend. Would not
You
recommend.
do not disrespect whatever's after that dash in the South. That's part. Well, actually, it's Beth Ann. Like, if you call her Beth, you're gonna get a corrective.
I don't know what to call her. I don't know what her freaking name is.
If there's a dash, you use both things on each side of that dash. You got to use them, John. That's her name. That's what her parents. In any case, I digress. So I thanked everybody. So that's part of it, right? I thanked everybody. I used their name if it was available. I did it staggered over the course of time. I tried to get to everybody. And Instagram has a filter option for your likes. So you can click on your heart, which shows the metrics for you. And you can look specifically at people who have followed you, that individual list. You can look specifically at people who have tagged you, that specific list, and you look specifically at people who have commented. So I went through all the follows. After I followed some of the people back. Some of them I didn't. They weren't relevant to what I do, and I knew it would clutter my news feed. No disrespect to you, but that's what I did. The second thing that I did, though, is I went on John's page where I was shared, and I liked every response to that post that he shared that had me in it. If there was a space for me to comment back for someone said, "Thank you, that's really clever," I would reply, "Thank you for looking at it. I appreciate it." So I interacted with the people that interacted with his post, in addition to interacting with the people who
Basically
followed me.
What you're saying, and this is radical. This is crazy.
And it's crazy.
What you're saying is that if somebody spoke to you,
I replied. I spoke
responded.
back. And, so
shit.
let me tell you what happened as a result of that.
I'm trying to get over.
trying to get over
this act of basic human decency
around communicating with other humans. Yeah, it was incredible. I had a win, sort of an epiphany that someone said something. What if I replied? And it was one of those stupid ideas on a piece of paper. I was like, this shit is stupid. And then I was like,
it was on the paper, so you did.
Yeah, it was on the paper, so I tried it.
Yeah.
So what happened as a result of that? Number one, I got followers, obviously. Some people will trickle off. I'm not their cup of tea. I know that. But number two, I hear us talk a lot in our community about all I've got following me is trainers. All I got following me is other colleagues, right? And how people think that's an anti-conversion thing, right?
Mm.
First of all, trainers hire trainers. I've got
trainers hire trainers more than anybody else. Trainers are fitness enthusiasts. Trainers spend more money on fitness and health than anybody else.
I've got 5 trainers that I'm training right now, right? Mm-hmm. But the second thing that happened is I got 2 podcast interviews, like 2 people decided, hey, I want to interview.
You promote this podcast and get them to link this podcast.
I'll promote it and I'll make the segue. It'll be like
Don't make it a segue, make it like the main thing.
The main thing that I talk about?
Yeah.
Like I'm Ren Jones.
Anytime they try to talk to you about anything else, just be like,
I'll slip obvious choice into every sentence.
Let me talk to you about my
obvious choice.
Let me talk to you about my very part-time employer.
No, you can't. Yes. My shaky, unstable, my incredibly unstable, shaky part-time.
Okay, so you were these podcasts. Okay,
and I got an invitation for a speaking engagement from a medical professional, from a gynecologist who was looking for men who were willing to talk about hormones and how it relates to training. She said, "I've been looking so long," and this was an offshoot of someone else who followed me. So this lady wasn't a follower of you, John. This lady was somebody who I commented on their page. She saw my comment on the person's page that saw your post about me. In any case, it opened up opportunities to me. Mm-hmm. So we want followers, we want influence, but when people start to follow us or something goes viral, we don't know what to do. The first thing you want to do is connect the humanity to the other person. And undoubtedly, I'm going to get more business from that. Like I know that someone who followed me is going to end up hiring me within the next 2 or 3 months
100%.
because they are all coaches and they don't deliberate on hiring coaches the way that laypersons do.
So there was a lesson my dad taught me, and I wrote it down on this piece of paper. See,
Nobody can read your chicken scratch
Nobody can read it. Look at this one. This is even
Looks
worse.
like a caterpillar.
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
I will often at night, like
hieroglyphics.
even in the dark, just like scribble pages and pages and pages, and I don't ever expect to read it.
That hurt my head.
My dad taught me a lesson years ago, and I don't think this is unique to him, but it was the lesson is one that I've always remembered, which is always remember to strike the iron when it's hot.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this a lot. We work so hard day after day after day to get attention. And then when we get attention, we like ignore it, or we're like, oh, I'm like protective of my time. I'm whatever. Right? Whereas what you just demonstrated is like, nah, it's okay for me not to sleep as much these next 2 days.
Right.
Like, like something good happened here, and I'm going to make the most of it. And I think that's really cool that you did that, because if you think about the downstream effects of that, I mean, 400 people is a huge amount of people.
It's a lot of people.
But as you've already demonstrated, the second order connection already asked you to speak at their thing to their patients,
right,
who are your ideal clients.
Exactly.
And that second order that would never have happened if you didn't do that initial outreach.
Never met him.
And so you think about that, but then you also think about what's happening to the mysterious algorithm. Woo-hoo.
Right.
We need like ghost sounds for the algorithm. And when you come back from holiday, can we get some ghost sounds? That'd be great.
I think we've learned I'm not really great at the sound effects.
Yeah, the sound. Yeah, that's true.
I can do
One
a Shaggy
day-
from Scooby-Doo though. So that
I would like to hear that.
Yeah. Like, look, Scoob, the algorithm's rocking tonight. Was that a good Shaggy?
That was good. And
Pretty
so,
good.
you having a messenger conversation with those 400 people is going to make you more relevant to them. And as a result, more relevant to people they are relevant to for like a pretty significant amount of time, which means that your content now will actually do better as a result. I mean, if your content's crap, it doesn't really help.
I want to interject because that's the other thing that I did. My next 2 pieces of content were things that I knew would be relevant to the new following. So one, I shared my story today of how I became a coach and all that, et cetera, et cetera. And the other thing I did, I posted something that was relevant to sort of industry, just for those, just so that I want to give them a little taste of what they probably came there for.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's not, that's not something I would normally do, but it was relevant in that case. So that, I give you the mic back. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I mean, that's fine. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend that. I would not recommend that. I think that's fine.
Yeah, sorry. I
think for your purposes, because you're building a reputation in the industry, and part of what I'm trying to do too, because it benefits me, of course, is build up your reputation in the industry, because that'll help build the podcast as well.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, of course, that helps as well. But you struck the iron when it's hot. I remember this a few years ago. It's a lot of years ago, actually. I was in Oakland. Why was I in Oakland? I was in Oakland at Airbnb.
You've never been in Oakland, Jonathan. I've never heard an Oakland story from you.
Allison's grandparents, great-grandparents, who are now passed away, but she has an aunt who still lives there, live in Piedmont, Oakland.
Really?
So I've actually been to Oakland like a number of times. So we were at an Airbnb in Oakland. And I was doing a launch for, this was probably 1K extra. That's how long ago this was.
Wow.
But I sent out the magic 9-word email. So this was like near the end of the launch. And the email is, hey, are you still interested in, can't remember what it was, but like the appeal. Are you still interested in financial freedom for trainers? I was probably still in the phase of like using that type of language. Hey, are you still interested in financial freedom as a trainer? John. And those emails are designed to get a response, to elicit a conversation. And holy hell, did I get a response. I maxed out my email send limit because I responded to so many. So I expected a bunch of responses. And what I did is I actually mapped out, like I scripted out and saved them as canned responses in Gmail. for responses. So I thought, I was like, okay, well, there's going to be basically 3 responses. There's going to be no. Fine. That's easy. There's going to be yes with no context. And then there's going to be yes, but I can't afford your program right now. Like those are the 3 responses that are going to come in. And so what I actually did is I mapped out with scripted canned responses, a response to those 3 situations, and then a response to the potential situations. So I could just get through these fast. And I maxed out the email send limit. And I had to go, this is when I was using GoDaddy email. And I had to go into GoDaddy and like increase my limit, like pay for more because it blocked me. And the reason that I tell the story is I just kept reminding myself that line from my dad, strike the iron when it's hot. This is what you worked for. Because I didn't sleep that night. I sat at a computer in an Airbnb by myself for, God, probably 15 hours straight. And just sent canned response email after canned response email, one by one by one. And it was worth it. I won't tell you how much money that launch made because I don't remember exactly, but like it was life-changing money.
Right.
And it brings me back to your point, which immediately what I thought of is a lot of people, most people I would have tagged in a post like that would have responded once in a comment and be like, hey, thanks so much. That's so cool, man. And then they would have gotten like 400 followers and then they would have like done nothing.
Right.
You went and responded to everybody in there, which I really appreciated because it helps the post.
Right.
Which actually wasn't that successful of a post.
Right.
In terms of engagement, but you helped push the post a lot. So I was appreciative of it. And then on your end, you struck the iron when it was hot. You took advantage of this influx in like a really annoying way.
Yeah.
Like it could not have been fun doing that.
It wasn't.
But you're going to benefit from that for a lot of years through new connections.
And when I say it wasn't fun, I want to be clear because I'm a people person. So it's not odd for me to want to reply to them, but the actual act of doing it, it's just you lose track of what universe you're in by number 50. And you just, did I just send that or did I not send it? Let me check and see if I said, like, that's the kind of stuff that you run into.
Right.
However,
we only have like 5 minutes left. Do we want to talk about this guy who sells coaching packages for like minimum $5,000 and how he does it, or do we want to save that?
I say save it.
Yeah, that sounds like a really big topic.
Yeah, that's a big
to dive into.
Let's defer to Marie Kondo and that story because we chatted about that briefly, and I just think it's an awesome.
Does it spark joy for you, Ren?
I'll defer to Amber.
Oh, yeah, what was the stuff that we talked about in our chat that we were going to talk about on the podcast?
It was about this. It was about Marie Kondo and the man and the Ali quote, the Muhammad Ali quote. The man that thinks the same way at 50 as he did at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life. I gave it away. You remember that? You're like shifting your perspective. You were talking about your book and how it maybe goes against some of the things that you've previously established. Remember?
That's a big topic too, though.
Let's save that, but let's talk about. I want Amber to talk about Marie Kondo because I'm not a woman and I don't have children. And I want to know how laughable she felt it might have been when she first discovered Marie Kondo and her perfection of tidiness versus Marie Kondo's acknowledgement now that these damn kids drive me crazy, y'all. Fuck this house. Like that's basically what happened. What are your thoughts, Amber?
She also just spits profanity 24/7 now.
She's basically from Oakland. Marie Kondo is. But Amber, what are your thoughts?
So for those who don't know who Marie Kondo is, she has a book and had a Netflix not documentary, but series about like how to set up your environment to be tidy. And so she would go through this process with all of these people of going through all of your items and what sparks joy, right? And so there's this whole like joke. And so like, especially like in parenting groups, you know, when you're asking for advice, if that does not spark joy, toss that man out into the dumpster.
Well, and she also sold this like obscenely expensive
Mhm.
brand of like tidying up gear, basically boxes for like stupid amounts of money because it was under her brand.
Well, it's funny because she's obviously this very well put together, super cute, itty bitty, little person who, like, for a lot of parents who feel like I want to aspire to that, I feel like an ogie and like I don't have my shit together. And so it's like, I don't know what you would call it, but like it's just kind of fantasizing about this world that she lives in that we can't seem to
That's kind of what it was, though, wasn't it? It was almost like fetishizing.
I'm not even gonna try
that word.
Fetishizing. Yeah.
It was like a fetish. It was something you knew you couldn't do because it's a ridiculous thing to do if you have kids, and anybody who had kids just laughed in her face because of how ridiculous it is.
But there's a lot of shame that goes with that because it makes it feel like you should be able to, and there's something wrong with you that you can't do it. There's some kind of secret that you're missing out on. And so it's just really fucking funny that now she has 3 kids and she's like, well, I have more important things to worry about. And we're like, bitch, we said that like how long ago? And so it's kind of similar to like, these 20-year-olds that are like, get up in the morning and, meditate for 10 minutes and then write, 10 things in your gratitude journal. Like, until you are actually there, you have not earned the right to give me advice in that.
I think it's just, I think what it comes down to is I was 22 years old and I would hold my client Tom in contempt because he showed up between 4:35 and 4:37 every single Tuesday and Thursday. And I was like, this guy cannot be on time. Meanwhile, Ted is the chief of psychiatry at one of the biggest hospitals in Toronto.
Right.
Ted has 3 kids who are all preteens or teens who all have programs and stuff they're going to constantly. And Ted has like, Tom, not Ted. Tom had like over different times like entrepreneurial ventures. And so he had a TV show for a little bit of time then. The fact that this guy was able to show up at 4:35 to 4:37 Tuesday and Thursday to work out
at all
is incredible. But meanwhile, I'm there and my 22-year-old idiot personal trainer, wondering where this guy is, frustrated, drinking my magic bullet, like chicken and broccoli drink, whatever, saying, shit, he's late again. It's just, I don't think that there's anything wrong with being young and just not understanding. I think it's just, I just don't think you can hope to understand. And I think you need to respect that. I just finished a really wonderful book. It was called Lessons in Chemistry. And it really was a wonderful book. It was one of the most well-written, well-developed, most powerful books I've read in a very, very long time. And it's a fictional story based in the 1950s with a female chemist, and it's her navigating just sexism after tragedy after tragedy. And I still can't, I now have some sort of superficial idea of what really intelligent women who wanted to work in the 1950s.
Yes.
I now have some idea superficially of what they were, but I still don't really know.
Right.
And I think we just need to respect that. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a 20-some-year-old personal trainer who doesn't know anything about real life, because I don't think that you need to. I think you just need to respect that you don't know everything about real life. And as I'm 37 with 2 kids, I don't really know what people who have teenagers go through.
Right.
But I will.
Right.
And I think you just need to understand. I mean, the same token, like, I don't know what Amber deals with a child who has special needs. Right. It's like, I speak to Amber all the time. She's my work wife. Like I get it. We speak about her son a fair bit, but do I really know?
It's
I wouldn't give her advice on how to tidy up her home.
Right.
That's for sure.
Right.
And to be fair, we all do this though, right? Like, we've all been in this position and we still do it to a degree. It's all with good intention.
Absolutely.
So we poke fun at it, so the intention is usually well-meaning, but
it's like we poke fun at it. So we I mean, I get this stuff on my page all the time with whatever amount of followers you said it was, but like it's a reasonably sized page, and there's people who listen to it, which is amazing. And so last week I put a post up, and it was just like rules that I live by. It's just rules that work for me, that help me navigate my life. Because as you listened to this before, you know that there's just too much for me to think about. And I kind of have created a whole series of cheat codes. And I understand that they're not perfect. And I understand that they're not perfect for every situation, but you just have to have cheat codes. There's just too much. And one of them is, if somebody is late, if somebody is not punctual, I have a very hard time trusting them. And I don't want to work with people who aren't punctual. And so a flood of people come in and they say, well, I have ADHD and we're time blind. And this isn't fair to us. You can absolutely trust me, but I can't believe that you would say this. And maybe I don't really know.
I mean, as someone who has ADHD, it's an explanation. It is not an excuse. Those are two different things.
Right.
So on one hand, Amber, you've officially, I don't know if you want to share that. So
I don't care.
You officially got diagnosed with ADHD a short while ago, and you've never not been on time.
No.
So, I mean, not to say that it's not.
There's different severities, but I have a
100%.
bunch of things built into my own cheat codes to make sure I show up on time.
Right.
And so, but at the same time, all that I said to all of the responses, and people are like, oh, rule number 15 is BS. Oh, rule number 18 is stupid. I'm like, my response to them is always the same. This is what I found works for me right now. And on my page, I share what works for me. And I really hope you do the same, because that could help a lot of people.